So after working as a developer for 10 years, I finally got the opportunity to work at a cybersecurity for almost 2 years, and then I realized we don't pay attention to security as developers. No, we don't. So in this video, I'm going to be sharing with you 5 ways your application can be attacked. And I'm not talking about attack that is targeted against users of your applications, things like phishing or downloading malware and stuff like that. No, I'm talking about attacks that are targeted at you, the application developer.
Holy moly!
You, the application developer, we're going to be looking at some very common ones, and then we're going to be looking at some more complicated and fancy ones. But before we begin, let's run the intro. So the first type of attack we're going to be looking at is SQL injection. Now, what happens in an SQL injection attack? The attacker simply crafts a malicious query and makes it find its way into your application. An SQL injection attack is targeted at your backend. So what the attacker is trying to do is to get this malicious query into your backend. It takes advantage of a query flaw. Most of the time when you've not sanitized your queries, you've not prepared your query statement properly, an attacker can prepare a query statement, input it in a text box. They're always looking for a text box because forms are the easiest forms of entry into your application. So they target a text box and they craft this malicious query to feed into your text box. And before you know it, if it works, it can expose sensitive information from your database. It can print out things like credit card information, passwords, and stuff like that. And at that point, as my people will say, Otilo is gone.
Hey, support my dear.
They are inside, and they can even do more things than just expose sensitive information. They can probably run a query that would delete a database, or move money from one database to another, or switch an identity within your database. So SQL injection is the very first one. Is one of the OWASP top 10 vulnerabilities that you should take back. Be concerned about when you are building web applications. And the solution to this is making sure that your query is sanitized. Your SQL queries are properly sanitized. Your forms are also sanitized, both on the front end or on the back end. Even though they are basically targeting the back end, they are targeting your database. So make sure you are sanitizing your queries properly to avoid this type of attacks, that is SQL injection attacks. So the second type of attack we're going to be looking at is cross-site scripting. This attack makes use of JavaScript, so it's basically targeted at your front end. So what's the attacker trying to do? What they're trying to do is to make sure that your browser runs a malicious JavaScript code. They want to make it run a malicious JavaScript code. So they look for something that will be displayed. They look for something that a user will enter into a form and be displayed on the next page. Let's say a user is trying to fill a registration form, so they enter their name and they go to the next stage of registration, and it will show them, oh yeah, this is the name that you entered and stuff like that. So they target stuff like that will be displayed. So what they do is make sure that they get a malicious JavaScript into a form. Yeah, forms are your biggest attack vectors when it comes to this type of attacks. They try to get it into a form and it is saved in the database. It's saved in the database. So on that other page, where that stuff is being displayed, like say the username is being displayed or the name is being displayed, that JavaScript, because they didn't enter a username or this thing, they entered a script. So they enter that script, is already in your database. So when your application is fetching the data to display on the next page, is actually fetching a malicious JavaScript, and as it appears on your page, it will run. That JavaScript will run, and it can do things like steal cookies, steal sessions, or display a field, an unknown field to the user to collect sensitive information. It will just generate a form field within a form, and the user will think that it's a normal field. The user will think it's part of your website, and the user can enter sensitive information inside, like their credit card number, like their date of birth, or any type of sensitive information that they can use to be able to get the user's information. So that is cross-site scripting. And also the solution to it is making sure that your forms are sanitized and that your database queries are sanitized to remove any type of funny characters that can lead to malicious JavaScript being injected into your database. Now it's time to get a little more fancy, and the next type of attack we're going to be looking at is distributed denial of service. DDoS, distributed denial of service. So what happens in this type of attack? First, what the user is targeting is your application's network. They're targeting your network, they're targeting your servers. So what do? The attacker recruits a bunch of zombie systems. They either recruit it or they even purchase it. Some will rent these systems. They have infected all these systems, sometimes thousands of systems, sometimes hundreds of systems. They recruit them into something known as a botnet. Something known as a botnet. These are zombie systems, an army of zombie systems waiting for your attacker to command them. And what does your attacker do to initiate this denial of service attack, it sends a command to all the zombie systems to send requests to your application. They just hit your application. All of them just call your application at the same time. Now imagine hundreds of thousands of applications, hundreds of thousands of requests hitting your application at the same time. That would kill your bandwidth. That would eat up your bandwidth. So what they do is jam your application with thousands, millions of requests to exhaust your bandwidth, and before you know it, actual users that want to use your application will not be able to get in. Why? Because they've exhausted the bandwidth. They've made your server to crash, they've made your app to shut down, and you have to spend a lot of time trying to get your app back up. And even when you get your app back up, these things are automated, they are timed. Once they know that you are back up, they hit it again. So this is a very, very sophisticated format of attack. It requires more preparation and more infrastructure by the attacker, but it also has a very huge negative impact on your application because it can make you go out of service. It can make you go out of service for long periods of time. Now, to prevent this type of attacks, you need to do things like rate limiting, that you limit the rate at which requests can be received at your end. You can also use some stuff like intrusion prevention systems or IDS, as intrusion detection systems, to be able to notice malicious patterns within your traffic and be able to block it, curb it. You can also do IP whitelisting so that you can restrict the applications that can call your app. You can restrict any type of weird, unknown client that's trying to access your application. You can resist all. You can just whitelist IPs that can call your application. So those are some of the ways that you can prevent a DDoS attack, or use something like Cloudflare. Cloudflare also can help you prevent those kind of things. They can serve as some sort of gateway to the requests that come to your site, and they are well suited, well equipped to prevent DDoS attacks. Now, the next type of attack we're going to be looking at takes advantage of your negligence.
Holy moly!
Yeah, the entry point of this attack is basically your negligence, because these attacks take advantage of cryptographic failures. Now, what are cryptographic failures? Now, a lot of us know when you want to save sensitive information into your database, you don't just put them there as plain text. No, that is definitely not the standard. You want to convert them, you want to encrypt them basically, and then store them in your database. So you use functions like SHA-1 of the SHA-1 family, SHA-2 family, and all the SHA-516, 512 rather, or SHA-256 functions. Now, what you might not know is that over time, some of these hashing functions, some of these cryptographic algorithms get broken. They get cryptographically broken. We all know the case with MD5, and a lot of the earlier SHA family algorithms have been cryptographically broken. So if you have used this algorithm to hash passwords into your database and they have been broken, you are vulnerable. Yes, you have become vulnerable, and an attacker can take advantage of that, fetch those sensitive information, reverse engineer them, and be able to see passwords in plain sight, see API credentials, see all sort of sensitive information in plain text. And do I need to tell you how what the negative impact of that, or that will be on the integrity of your application? Nah, I don't think I need to do that. To prevent this type of attacks, you always have to stay up to date with any type of hashing functions or cryptographic algorithms you're using within your application, and make sure that when any of them are broken, you change them to more secure ones. That way you can keep your application always secure. Just release patches to your applications to make sure that all these security vulnerabilities are closed. Now, this last one is very, very fancy and often complicated to set up. In fact, it takes into account, or rather it relies on a user error. If I want to add of very, very big companies that you know of, and you hear of them being hacked, and you're like, yeah, all the security information are publicly known, why is this big company still hacked? Yeah, this one we're going to be discussing is one of the ways that they can be hacked. Now, we're going to be looking at something called a command and control attack. What happens in this type of attack is that one of your staff is tricked into clicking a link. It can be to anything. In fact, when they click the link, probably nothing will happen. It might even tell them that the server is not available. So they use something like spear phishing, or use a USB stick. So someone gives them a USB stick, they stick it into the company laptop, and before you know it, the malware is in. So once the malware is in their system, what happens is that this malware just sits there and sends a heartbeat signal to the attacker outside. The attacker maintains a server outside that receives a heartbeat signal when the malware is active. The malware is using this heartbeat signal to tell the attacker, yes, I am live, I'm on this system, and this system is officially a zombie system. Now, at this point, the attacker can do anything. One of the common things the attacker can do is perform something called data exfiltration, which is packing data, sensitive data from the victim's computer. This can be files, this can be any sort of assets that are on the victim's computer. It's going to get it and be sending it to the attacker over a DNS request. Yeah, it's going to be attaching it to the DNS request and just be sending it out. These are things that if your network guys are keeping tabs on things that are happening, they can see on Wireshark, on the tool like Wireshark. You just keep seeing this anomaly traffic, these anomaly patterns in the traffic. So they can perform data exfiltration, meaning they can be stealing stuff from the user's computer, or they can spread themselves. That's what a worm is. They just spread themselves through the company network to other computers, and they all wait there to receive commands from the attacker. So the victim 0 is affected, and that malware starts spreading itself across the company network as a worm, and starts recruiting other computers. That's why sometimes you can just see that at a point in time, the attacker can send a command, and all the files on everyone's computer is going to be encrypted. Just going to be encrypted, and then it's asking for crypto to make you unlock it and stuff like that. So that you can do stuff like that. They can lock all your systems and request for money. They can also shut down your operation. Maybe they don't need money. They just want to put a bad reputation on your business, so they shut it down. And we've also discussed how they can steal sensitive information from your system. So this is one of the ways that you can be attacked. Your application can be attacked internally through one of your staff using a command and control server, or as some people call it, C2 server. I wrote an article on that. I might drop the link in the description. Yeah, I wrote a full article about how that is implemented. So a command and control is also a way whereby an attacker outside your network is basically in your network, because he now has control of your computers, is recruiting zombie systems, and can now give them instructions on command. How do you prevent this? Please stop clicking links you don't know. Stop clicking links you don't know. Stop using devices that are not approved by the system. Stop being a victim of something called shadow IT. Shadow IT is when you are using applications that the network guys in your company do not approve. So that's the very first way. And I think companies also need to give their staff good cybersecurity training, because this will help you to be more aware. This will help all staff members to be aware, so that when they see any type of weird stuff, they don't become the entry point for an attack of that magnitude on your company. Also, you want to make sure that you're scanning your network regularly. You're scanning the network in your company regularly, and you're setting alerts on different types of weird patterns that might take place, so that you can take charge of this operation as soon as possible. Because some of these attackers deploy something called an APT. An APT is an advanced persistent threat. This is a type of threat that is insidious. It just sits there. It can sit there for days, it can sit there for weeks, it can sit there for months, just waiting for the right time to strike. So you need your network guys to always watch the company network and always make sure that they are catching any weird thing that is going on over the network. So those are the 5 ways your application can be attacked that I will be sharing today. And one thing, the company I work for, the cybersecurity company I work for, we used AI to do a lot of those activities. That's watching threats, detecting threat patterns, identifying threat patterns, categorizing threats, and stuff like that. If you'd like to learn stuff about AI, I have made this video that talks about 5 ways that you can add AI to your application, so you want to check that out. See you in another video.